You know, whenever you send an email or stream a video, you probably picture the data zipping through the air, maybe bouncing off a satellite, right? We talk about the cloud. But what if I told you that's not really how it works? We're about to dive deep into the secret physical world that actually powers our internet.
So get this. Forget satellites. They're a tiny, tiny fraction of the story. The reality is, over 99%, yeah, you heard that right, 99% of all international data travels through a hidden network of cables.
And these cables are laid across the deepest, darkest, most remote parts of our planet. Everything, and I mean everything, from global financial markets to your video calls with family, relies on this web of wires, many of them no thicker than a garden hose, just sitting there on the ocean floor.
This fact just completely flips our modern idea of a wireless, ethereal world on its head. So if our data isn't just floating around in the air, where is it really?
Well, the internet has a physical address, and it's down in the abyss. It is a real, tangible network. It's an absolute triumph of engineering. And as we'll see, it's a critical strategic asset that we almost never, ever think about.
So here's our journey for this explainer. We'll start with the incredible story of the impossible first wire. Then we'll see how they became the nerves of empire and war. We'll cover the revolution of light that powers today's internet, look at the new undersea battleground, and finally ask how we guard these digital lifelines.
All right, let's start at the beginning, the impossible first wire. You have to remember, back in the mid-1800s, sending a message across the Atlantic was a 10-day journey by steamship. The dream, the absolutely crazy dream, was to do it instantly.
Now, an audacious idea like that needed a few key ingredients. You had the promoter, an absolutely relentless American financier named Cyrus West Field. You had the scientist, the brilliant Lord Kelvin, who figured out the physics of sending a signal that far. And then you had the miracle ingredient, an insulator called gutta-percha, this natural latex that could somehow withstand the crushing pressure of the deep sea.
But man, the first attempts were just these epic sagas of failure. Cables snapped and were lost to the deep. Ships were nearly sunk by ferocious storms. It was this brutal, painful process of trial and error, pushing 19th century engineering to its absolute limit. And then, finally, in August 1858, a fragile connection was made.
The world just erupted in celebration. It seemed like an actual miracle. The Times of London captured the feeling perfectly, declaring that the ocean itself had been conquered, that two continents were now one.
But that euphoria didn't last long. Behind the scenes, the signal was basically a ghost. Queen Victoria sent a message of congratulations. It was 99 words long. It took over 16.5 hours to transmit. The connection was barely alive.
And then, the fatal blow. The project's chief electrician got impatient. He completely ignored Lord Kelvin's scientific warnings and just blasted the line with 2,000 volts of electricity, hoping to force a stronger signal through. Instead, he completely fried the insulation. After just 3 weeks of glory, the cable went dead, and this incredible triumph turned into a global fiasco. Real, lasting success wouldn't come until 8 years later, in 1866. And it took a much more scientific approach. And, kind of by a stroke of luck, the perfect ship. The SS Great Eastern, which was a total commercial failure as a passenger ship, just happened to be the only vessel on Earth massive enough to carry the entire, much-improved cable in one go, finally making the dream a reality.
All right, part 2, nerves of empire and war. See, once this network was established, it very quickly became more than just a tool for business. It became a powerful strategic weapon.
Britain, which was at the absolute height of its power, created what was known as the All-Red Line. It was a global network connecting its vast territories, named for the red and pink colors used to shade the British Empire on world maps. The whole point was to make sure that every cable landed on British-controlled soil, so London could securely command its colonies and fleets instantly.
And that strategic importance, of course, made the cables a prime military target. Which brings us to one of the most decisive yet kind of little-known moments right at the start of World War I.
Literally within hours of declaring war on Germany, Britain's first move wasn't a naval battle. They dispatched a cable-laying ship, the Alert, into the English Channel. It found Germany's 5 main transatlantic cables and just cut them, just like that. In a single quiet night, the German Empire was informationally isolated from the rest of the world.
Now, this forced Germany to communicate over the much less secure radio waves, and wouldn't you know it, British intelligence was listening to every word. This one simple act led directly to the interception of the famous Zimmermann telegram, the very message that helped push the United States into the war, changing everything.
Okay, let's jump forward in time to the revolution of light.
This is the next great leap, where we moved beyond simple telegraph messages, first carrying our voices, and then the endless stream of data that would build our modern world.
You can really see this transition in two landmark cables. In 1956, you have TAT-1. It was made of copper and could carry just 36 phone calls at a time. Then, in 1988, comes TAT-8. It's the first fiber optic cable, made of pure glass, and it could carry 40,000 calls. That jump in capacity basically paved the digital highway for the World Wide Web.
So how did that happen? Well, this capacity explosion came from a few key innovations. You had Charles Cow's breakthrough theory that light could travel for miles through pure glass. Then came a technique allowing us to send a whole rainbow of data, different colors of light, down a single fiber. And finally, powerful new amplifiers that could boost all those signals at once.
The result is just this staggering exponential growth. We went from about 8 words per minute in 1866 to 200 terabits per second on a modern cable. That's enough to stream literally millions of HD movies all at the same time. It's just an unbelievable leap.
Which brings us to today, the new undersea battleground. Because all of that incredible capacity has turned the quiet, dark seabed into a brand new arena for geopolitical competition.
Right now, we are seeing what many people are calling a cable Cold War, playing out primarily between the United States and China. But this conflict isn't really about ideology. It's about something way more fundamental. Who builds, who owns, and who controls the physical pipes of the global internet?
And this rivalry is causing the internet's physical backbone to literally split in two. On one side, you have the US tech giants, your Googles, your Metas, building their own private cables and deliberately routing them to bypass China. And on the other side, China is building its own parallel network, often called the Digital Silk Road, creating an alternative data backbone for its partners around the world.
And you can see how the nature of the threat has evolved by looking at 2 different outages. Back in 2008, a couple of ship anchors were accidentally dragged across cables in the Mediterranean, and it caused a massive regional internet blackout. But fast forward to 2024, when suspected sabotage hit a cable in the Baltic Sea. The actual outage was tiny, almost negligible. The goal wasn't a blackout, it was a political message. It was a demonstration of power and vulnerability.
So, guarding our digital lifelines. Given all these new and evolving threats, how in the world do we protect this vital, yet almost completely invisible, global asset?
Well, first, let's get our facts straight about the real threats. Forget the popular myth about sharks chewing on cables. That's a fun story, but there hasn't been a single confirmed shark bite fault since 2007. The overwhelming majority of damage, we're talking around 70%, comes from totally mundane human activity. Fishing trawlers and ship anchors. Malicious action, historically, is incredibly rare.
The core challenge we face today is this fundamental mismatch. We have privately owned assets that serve as critical public infrastructure. So securing them is going to require a whole new kind of partnership between governments and the tech companies that own them. They'll need to share intelligence on threats, co-invest in making the network more resilient, and even work to speed up the diplomacy needed to get vital repairs done quickly.
And all of this leaves us with a huge, fundamental question for our hyper-connected age. The central nervous system of our entire world is no longer owned by nations or public groups, but by a handful of giant private companies. So who should ultimately be responsible for guarding it?